What's up, guys? Vylocity from Pitchfork Academy, back with another Unreal Engine 5 material tutorial, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to transform and customize any texture that you may have into something unique to your project, and you'll be able to customize this in any way that you see fit. For example, something a little bit more painterly and stylized, or even a pixelated effect to kind of help enhance maybe a certain feeling that you're trying to portray with your game. And this will be using a free tool called Material Maker, and I'm going to show you step by step how to set this up, and it's super fast and easy, and you'll be able to sort of run all your textures that you may have in your game through this software and through this filter to help make your entire project look cohesive and like it's all part of the same universe. But before we get started, I'd like to invite everyone to join our free and public Discord server, the Pitchfork Academy. It's a great place to connect with like-minded individuals, share some of your work, and maybe even get some help. If you'd like to join us, the invite link is in the description and in the pinned comment. Now let's get into the tutorial. Alright, here we are inside of Unreal Engine 5.6, and I just want to get a texture set from Fab, one of the Megascan Quixel texture sets. A really nice realistic texture. We're going to take it and do some stylization to it. So I'll just go to Window and then open up the Fab browser. Sometimes it takes a second to load. And then from here, once it loads, we'll want to search for really any texture that you can think of. So I'm just going to search first for Quixel, whoops, and then maybe a wood texture. From here, to make it a little bit easier to sort through, I'll go to Materials and Textures on the left here as a filter, and then I'll go to Price and select Free. Then from here, we want to find a nice wood texture that has some good detail on it. Maybe something like this cracked wooden planks. It's not a bad example. Let's see if there's maybe a better one. Maybe this one next to it. Yeah, let's try this one. For the purpose of this, I'll do the medium quality and I'll add it to my project. And then it should take us right to the folder. It'll create a folder for Fab if you didn't already have one, and then it'll be Megascans, surfaces, and then all of the ones that you have. I already had a couple in here from a previous tutorial. So the wooden planks is the one that we just got. So I'll go all the way inside here and then find textures. And here we have the 3 textures. So pretty realistic texture here, but not for long. We're going to stylize it. So first thing we need to do is to select all of them, and then we'll export them. So I'll just go select all of them, and then Asset Actions, Export. And then I'll just put them on my desktop for now. And I'll call them just what they're named is fine. And then it'll ask you for each texture. I think you can instead maybe select bulk export. And it won't ask you for each one, but that's fine nonetheless. Then we can go to the Material Maker website, and let's download Material Maker. It's a really quick, easy, and free download, and then we can get started. All right, so here we are on materialmaker.org, and this program is essentially a program that allows you to not only edit existing textures like we'll be doing today, but you can also create textures from scratch using a node-based system similar to that of Materials, but you basically use it to create shapes and colors and combine them together in unique ways. So this is something you can definitely look into, but for today, we're just going to be editing some existing textures by applying some filters. So what we want to do is just click download now, and then at the top, click download now again. And then you can choose to donate if you like. I'll just click no thanks, just take me to downloads. And then I'll choose the one for Windows. And then it should start to download at the top. Once it's downloaded, you'll want to install it. I've already done that. I've already extracted it and then installed it. So I'll meet you guys inside Material Maker. All right, here we are inside of Material Maker. And as you'll notice right away, it has one node by default, and you can't delete this node. And we won't actually be using this node. We'll be using a different node to export our textures, and it's actually called export. So from the filter, we can just search that really quickly. and we'll drag it right below here. And since we know that our textures that we got from Megascan are 2K, we can go ahead and just set it to be 2K on the export. However, you can set it to be higher and it will export the higher resolution. And based on some of the filters, it might be worth it if you want to upscale the textures because the filters themselves can sample the texture at 4K. So then it's actually valid to export at 4K. But just to keep our project performant, we'll leave it at a 2K texture. I'll set this suffix to D for diffuse texture. That's our first Megascan texture. And then I'll duplicate this down, and this next one will be N for our normal map. Whoops. And then the final one will be our ORM. Then from here, we can search in our filter for an image. I'll click and drag out the image. And then to set the image, you just click the image right here once and then find your textures wherever you saved them to from Megascan. So I'll go to my desktop, and then here at the bottom, I have my 3 textures, the base color, the normal map, and the ORM. So I'll double click the base color one. And I guess I could have named this _B. So we'll do capital B just to keep it in line. So here we have our original Megascan texture. As you can see, it's super realistic. And the first thing that we want to do is to get a filter it's called a Kuwahara filter. So I just searched KUWA, and there's a few here. The one that I think works the best is the anisotropic one. And then we can experiment with these other ones as well, the classic and the generalized. But first, we'll just plug this wood texture into filter. And then when I highlight this, you'll notice right away that it sort of makes it a painterly effect. It looks pretty cool right off the bat, especially if you zoom out and you look at it from this right here. It's actually really, really nice by default, but we can adjust this a little bit. I'll show you guys some different ways you can think about what the numbers could be. Of course, this is all personal preference and there's not a right answer here. I'll just sort of show you some examples of what these different numbers do. And then whenever I think it looks okay, I'll probably just export it from there. But I definitely recommend that you tweak these to however you want it to look and really spend some time getting your art style down. Because once you have this set up, you can basically run all your textures through this filter and you'll have your own unique art style. So the first thing I'll do is change the resolution from 512 to 1024. And this is just going to simply increase the resolution of the sampled texture. The more I increase this, the higher resolution it gets. And then you can go up to 4K, and then it starts to look like the original texture. It's not exactly right like the original. So if I highlight the original and then this one and go back and forth, you'll see that it is not exactly the same. It looks much smoother on this new one. But now at 4K, if we increase the size, let's say double it, now we're starting to get more of a stylized painted effect, but still at that higher resolution. The uniformity, if you lower this all the way to 0, it looks kind of splotchy and not so good in my opinion. However, it might be good for yours, so that's one way to get it a little bit more detail. If you crank it up, it looks like that. Default value was 4. And yeah, there's really no change from 4 to 50 in my opinion. But if it's an effect that you like and you notice a change, go for it. Sharpness, I leave that at 0 or at 1 because 0 looks super blurry. And then eccentricity, if you increase that, it follows the lines of the original texture a bit more. If I lower it all the way, you can see now it's very uniformly sort of adding these spherical spots. But if we increase it, it keeps that nice original direction. So I like raising it to 2 from 1, but maybe a value between 0.5 and 2 is valid for sure, depending on what you're going for. And yeah, so really what I recommend playing around with the most is the resolution size. I would mess around between maybe 512. Oh, yeah, if you go as low as 512, you can't have the size too high or the texture will get a little lost. Actually, when you zoom out, it doesn't look so bad, but if we set this to 4, for example, now we have pretty decent texture. I'll set mine to 2K, and then maybe a size of 12. See how that looks. It's not bad. And if I flip-flop back and forth between, you can see the difference is quite nice. Then we can just really quickly check the classic one. It's just a little bit different algorithm with how it does the filtering. If we zoom way in, you can see it sort of offsets the texture based on this other little texture. And if we change the size, it just makes it more and more finer, more detailed. And the size here, of course, is a similar effect as the other one. I'm not the biggest fan of this one, but maybe if you really tweak it, you can get some cool results. Like that's not too bad there. I'll just go ahead and delete this one, and then we can check the generalized as well. So there's a 1K sample, and then the size of the effect we can increase maybe. We'll increase the sample size as well. This one's not bad, but it looks like it blurs some areas more than others, which I'm sure is part of the effect. But in my opinion, I like the other one better. We do a 4K sample size and increase the size maybe. Starts to look pretty cool, but again, it's a little bit blurry in some areas, so we won't do that. Really quickly, we can look at another filter for pixelating. So if I just search pixel and get out the Pixelize filter, we can plug this in. So there's the original, and then here is the pixelated filter. Obviously, that's not so nice yet, but if we type in column 64, rows 64, and then increase the levels. Oh, not the levels, but maybe, yeah, we want levels to be pretty, yeah, so number of colors. That's good to keep decently high, and then columns will actually want to increase even more, maybe 256, 256. And now we have more of a pixelated look here. Could even go 512, 512. And another thing that you could do with this is to quantize the texture, and that's going to be right here. So the levels, basically, if you hover over it, it tells you the number of colors for each channel. Yeah, this basically, it's kind of like cell shading the color, but instead of the lighting, it's the amount of bands of color. And then we can actually put this into the filter too. Let's see how that looks. Interesting. How about if we did it in reverse? Cool, so now we have the filtered texture getting pixelized. Increase the levels back. Maybe set the resolution here to 4K. This is a pretty cool effect. Maybe if we half the pixels. Not too bad. We increase the size of the filter. All right, we lower that. Okay, that's an interesting effect. By lowering the resolution here, we get more just smooth boards across. What if we go even lower? Yeah, pretty soft looking, but maybe a little too much. Pretty cool stuff. How about we disconnect Pixelize and we'll reconnect here. So here's with the Kuwahara filter, here's with the Pixelize filter, and then we could always combine the two to get that. So as you can see, there's a lot of different combinations you can make just by changing one number somewhere. You can get a totally different look. It's easy to get lost in this, but I recommend once you really think it looks decent, just to stick with it, make a few different sets of textures, look at them together, and then compare for yourself. And then if you notice maybe one type of texture doesn't look so good in one style, maybe you can then go back and change your numbers and maybe recalculate how you should handle the different textures. You could even have different numbers for different types of textures. Maybe your natural textures, you sample them all at 2048, but if your hard surface textures like your wood, your metals, you do a 4096, for example. Really, the possibilities are endless. But what I'll do is just stick with the um, I'll stick with the Kuwahara and the Pixelize. So I'll do this setup here. And then now we just want to select everything, bring it down nice and organized, and then just copy everything down twice. And then we can line these up. And we're just going to replace the texture over here on the left with the other textures. So I'll go back to my desktop. I'll get the normal. And then for this one, I'll click here, desktop, and the ORM. Now, for example, if I hover over the normal, that's the original. And then here is the stylized one. So as you can see, it still has all the normal details, but it's just a little bit stylized and more interesting. One thing I'm noticing though is that we're losing some of the fine cracks in the wood, basically totally disappear. What happens if we change the sample size to 4096 here? Yeah, we're getting those back more. Sure. What if we did a size of 8? To keep it nice and clean, let's do a number of 10 on each of these. And then we'll change them all to 4096. I'll just double check again. So here's our pixelated wood texture, the pixelated normal. It's okay if it's not perfect. It'll still look decent. And then our pixelated mask texture. So now that we have everything lined up, they're all the same numbers. We're going to now go to File, Export Material, and then Unreal Engine 5. And then here's where you name it. So I'll go to my desktop and then I'll name the textures T underscore wood underscore pixel. And then I'll click save. Again, I'm using the pixel here, but of course it's totally valid and cool just to use, for example, the Kuwahara filter with maybe a lower sample size to get this really cool painterly effect. Again, don't be afraid to try different things, mix and match, and really just have fun with it. Now that we have those exported, I'll meet you guys back in the engine. All right, so here we are back in Unreal, and I'm still in the same folder that I have the other textures in. And just to keep it organized, I'll put the new textures in here as well. So I'll just click and drag all 3 of my textures from my downloads folder, or sorry, from my desktop folder where I saved them, and bring them in. All right, as you can see, it imported them. It even imported the one as a normal map. That's great. So if we just open them up, we can see, so that's looking pretty cool. And then we can do the normal and the ORM. And if we only look at the R channel, you can see there's our ambient occlusion, the G's are roughness, and the B is our metallic, but there's no metallic, so that's expected. So we can, we need to actually adjust the normal texture. So I'll click on here. So it's already set to normal, but I did notice that Material Maker flips the green channel. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but we just need to find in the advanced tab here under textures, flip green channel, and we want to click this to be true. So it just reverses where the green is, and I can toggle that back and forth just to show again. We want this to be true. And then in the pixel ORM texture, we want the compression settings to be masks. We don't want any sRGB because this is a mask texture. We're using the channels individually, not as an entire color. So now this looks more correct. We have more gray values instead of black. So that's good. Now we can go ahead and close out of those. And I'll just click Save All to be sure that it all saves. All right, now I want to make a quick master material just to visualize the new textures that we brought in. You might have your own material already or be using the built-in Quixel material, but I'll just really quickly make one so we can visualize. So I'll just go back to my content folder and I'll right click, make a new folder called materials. And then in here, I'll just make a new material. Usually you'd want to make a new folder and be really organized, but for the tutorial, this will be fine. I'll just make a new material. I'll call it M underscore Megascan underscore stylized. And then inside of here, I'll open this up and then just drag it down to the side. Oh, here's our fab still open. And then now that we have this open on the side, I'll go back to find my textures. So I'll go into fab, Megascans, surfaces, wooden planks, medium, the name, textures, and then here's the 3 new textures that we made. So once they're in here, we can line them up, do the color first, then the normal, then the map, or the mask. And then off of here, we can multiply the color by a solid color. So I'll hold V on my keyboard and click for a vector parameter, and I'll call this color. I'll set the default value to be fully white, and then I'll wire this in like that. Then we can plug that into base color. Actually, really quickly, do like this little tip here. We'll desaturate the texture first by a scalar called desaturation. And as long as the default value is 0, it won't desaturate the texture yet, but I can just showcase really here. If you look on the left, a value of 1 obviously desaturates the texture. 2 is going to invert the colors. And then if you go below 0, it'll basically make it even more saturated. So I'll just leave it at 0 for now, but it's handy if you don't like the color that comes with the original texture and you want to multiply it with a good grayscale starting point. It really helps multiplying the color if you set the desaturation to 1. From here, we can plug normal straight into normal, and then we have our mask texture. I'll plug the R channel into ambient occlusion, and then from the G channel, I'll drag off and get a multiply. I'll hold S and click for a scalar. I'll call this roughness, and then the default value should be 1, so it uses no change at all. From the original texture, we want that to be the default. And then I'll duplicate this again, and I'll call this one metallic. And that'll be the B channel. I actually want the metallic one above the roughness. And then this goes into metallic like that. And then, yeah, as long as these are 1, that's good. That'll use the original textures information. And then we lastly want to convert the specular here to a parameter. I'll right click, convert to parameter. Specular's fine. You'll notice it's no longer shiny. That's not good. We want it to be a default value of 0.5, and then we can tweak it for our materials in the instance. Now we can save. First we want to convert these to parameters, all the textures. So I'll just right click and convert to parameter. We'll call this one diffuse. And then the next one will be the normal. And the final one will be ORM. Now we can save, close out. Go back to find that materials folder we just made. Then I'll right click, create a material instance. I'll call it mi underscore wood underscore stylized. And then let's just search for a mesh. I'm going to search for the chamfer cube just so we get this nice mesh with rounded corners. And I'll scale it up a bit. And I'll duplicate it. Just like that. And then we can go back to our materials, and then we'll put the stylized one second. And it's quite big, so we need to really quickly in the master material, I forgot to add the UVs, so I'll just right click and search for text coordinate, and then we'll multiply by a scalar value called UV scale. Default value can be 4. And then this gets wired into all of the UVs like so. This will tile it 4 more times. So as you can see here in the preview, it's 4 times as dense. That will make our texture appear smaller, which is good. And right away, you can see we have our nice stylized wood texture with the normal maps and also the roughness. If we open up the wood stylized instance, we can mess around with this a little bit. First thing I want to do is lower the specular. I'm going to half it, 0.25. It just makes it a little bit less likely to receive the light, so it's not as shiny. but it's different from roughness. So now if I lower the roughness to 0.6, you'll still see it's quite shiny. The specular just makes it not reflect as much light, and it keeps it a little bit more colorful, in my opinion. And as you can see now, we have some nice, shiny, pixelated, stylized wood. And then we can mess with the color. So if I go down to color, as of right now, it's pretty dark and it's already a value of 1. So what's cool about the color parameters is they go above 1. So you can go 2, 3, or even 5. A little bit brighter of a look there. And then you could also tint it as well if you wanted more of a red wood, orange, or if you wanted a pink wood, you could go that route as well. But you'll notice if I do try to make it a pinkish purple, it's still fighting a little bit with the default color. So if I set the desaturation to 1, you can see now it's exactly the color that we're selecting, which depending on your type of project, maybe what you're looking for. Maybe you're looking for some cool painted wood, like they have in games like the Finals, where they use brands to theme their different areas. And sometimes they'll have painted wood or painted concrete that's exactly the color that it's supposed to be. For example, red painted wood could be like that. I'll just click cancel and revert this color. I'll set the desaturation back to 0. And I'll just set the color to be a value of like 3, maybe a little bit brighter. And then we can quickly just visualize this next to the original one. So I'll duplicate this here and I'll just call it m_wood or mi_wood realistic. We'll put this one here. And here we will open up the textures and then browse to one of them. And we'll just replace them with the default ones here. And then I can go full screen. And as you can see, there's a very clear difference. And this one on the left is really nice. And if you're going for a super stylized game, then maybe it's not the route for you. But maybe if it's a realistic game, this is great. But this one on the right is just a little bit more interesting and different. It's unique in its own way. And it still has all of the same properties as the original one. It used the same normal map information and the roughness and all of that to still use the PBR pipeline, but it gives it a realistic look. And if you were to apply this to other textures, for example, brick or stone, grass, rock, dirt, you would have an entire unique art style for your game that would really set it apart from others. Really quickly, just for one more example, I went ahead and went back into Material Maker and I disconnected the Pixelize nodes and I changed the resolution on the Kuwahara filters to 2048. I believe it was on 4096. This just makes it a little bit more stylized. And then I re-exported with a new name with _brush at the end. So let's just go ahead and see how that looks now that we have a sort of another style. All right, so I'm dragging in now the 3 new textures with just the plain brush effect, disconnected the pixel. And we need to, again, do that thing where we flip the normal channel. So I'll just open up the normal map and then find flip green channel. Very important. And then we can save that, close out of that. And then we'll go to the ORM texture and change the compression settings from default to masks. This automatically unchecks RGB. And then we get the nice ambient occlusion and roughness. So now that we have those, we can duplicate this cube once more. And I'll just browse to that material. I'll duplicate it and I'll call this _brush at the end instead of stylized. And then we'll open that up and browse to these textures and we'll replace them with the new ones. So we'll do brush, and the brush ORM. And then just for another comparison, I'll duplicate the realistic one over. So here's the before on the right and then the after on the left. And yeah, it looks much more stylized and painterly in my opinion. And it still has all of the same normal map information and roughness and things like that. We can even go into it and tweak it a little bit more. For example, I think this one might look better a little bit higher roughness, maybe 0.75. And yeah, that's a totally different effect. So we got the pixel effect that has the Kuwahara built into it underneath, kind of. We did that one first and then pixelized it. This one's just the Kuwahara filter on its own, which gives a nice sort of stylized, painterly, almost Studio Ghibli look. I don't know if I'd go that far, but it is quite nice. And then here is just our original super realistic texture, which again, depending on your project, may not be for you. So it's just a quick and easy way to stylize your textures for free. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's video on how to quickly and for free stylize any texture that you may have, especially ones from Megascan, which come super realistic. So it's a quick and easy way to stylize them and make them your own to try to set your game apart from others that are always using the same textures because the Megascan ones are free. If you guys did enjoy this video and learned anything at all, it'd mean a lot to us if you left a like on the video and subscribe to our channel, as it lets us know that you want to see more videos like this one. This has been Vylocity with Pitchfork Academy, and I'll see you in the next one.